A decade ago, as she waited in the visitation room of the Ohio prison where her cousin was serving out a life sentence, Nicole Fleetwood started to wonder about the art displayed on the walls, made by the people incarcerated there. She began asking questions about how people could find ways to create while being held in detention. Her cousin has since been released from that prison, but Fleetwood's captivation with the artwork and how the artists are able to express their humanity through it has become her life's work. It started off informally and then it just grew into my being able to access over 70 currently and formerly incarcerated artists and to interview them and do deep dives into, how do you make art? She said. Her initial curiosity became marking time, art in the age of mass incarceration, a collection of works published in a book from more than 35 artists who are currently incarcerated, formerly incarcerated, or have been personally affected by the prison system. It's a culmination of Fleetwood's efforts to collect and curate works from these artists into a traveling exhibit. For Fleetwood, who was named a 2021 MacArthur Fellow, the project was originally a way to reflect on her family's legacy and what she could do to highlight what she considers a great injustice to her community. I had been thinking about the community in Southwest Ohio, where I grew up, she said. In a working class, working poor, Black community that's been just decimated by criminalization and imprisonment.
After curating works for many years, she first presented the artwork in 2014 at a conference, which brought her pursuit into the national conversation. Since then, the project has continued to evolve and expand. The exhibit is currently set up in Birmingham, Alabama, where the incarceration rate per capita is higher than that of many other nations as a whole, according to the Prison Policy Institute. As it got more expansive, it also became more empowering because it wasn't about the isolation of just one family's experience, but about people coming together to really undo the system that is based in inequality and in reproducing the vulnerability of the most marginalized people, Fleetwood said. She explained that many artists were open to sharing their work as a way to help people understand that they're human beings, not just inmates or prisoners. Fleetwood also said many formerly incarcerated people use art as a bridge for reentry by establishing relationships with other artists and organizations even before their release. Organizations like Mural Arts Philadelphia help find employment opportunities for artists during their reentry. The vast majority of these artists, Fleetwood said, continue to explore themes of incarceration after release, using art to bolster their social justice work. Mary Enoch Elizabeth Baxter, whose work has been exhibited in the African American Museum of Philadelphia, is one artist that Fleetwood has featured. Baxter uses a variety of mediums like film and music to explore and critique the criminal justice system, pulling from her personal experience in prison and solitary confinement. With the rise of movements like Black Lives Matter, Fleetwood believes people are paying more attention to injustices being enacted on vulnerable populations. She believes her project came out at a time when people are more receptive to hearing the stories she's trying to share. Nicole Fleetwood spoke to the PBS NewsHour about the exhibit, what it required to construct it and what the project means for those working to dismantle mass incarceration in the US. This interview has been condensed and edited for clarity. Tamika Cole's Locked in a Dark Calm, 2016. Collage and graphite on paper. 8.5 x 11 inches. Courtesy of the artist, photo provided by Nicole Fleetwood. I appreciate that question because my undergraduate and graduate degrees are all interdisciplinary studies. I've always been interested in multidisciplines, literature, art, race and ethnic studies. And actually, through interdisciplinary studies, I started to focus more and more on the visual culture of the United States and the importance of visual culture for disseminating ideas about race, gender, sexuality, identity categories, ideas about citizenship and systems of value that make some people more vulnerable to state regulation and other people. And so, I became an art historian, not by training, but by continuing to be guided by certain questions and concerns about inequality and value systems that really make certain people more precarious to punishment, to criminalization, to marginalization in society. And curating came about in the same kind of way. The more and more interested I got in art by incarcerated people, the more I needed to learn some skills and some tools for sharing that work broader than academic audiences. So I became a curator out of necessity. I always say that I got an extra graduate degree just through having to do the work. To have that work really seem required that I move into these different environments. In 2011 to 2012, after I wrote my first book, Troubling Vision, Performance Visuality, and Blackness, about American culture's fixation on black visibility in media, whenever someone would invite me to give a lecture, I didn't actually want to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about a book that I'd already published. I had been thinking for years about the community in Southwest Ohio where I grew up, in a working class, working poor, black community that's been just decimated by criminalization and imprisonment. And that as I was coming of age, several of the people in my neighborhood, people my age, ended up. I've never seen them again, like they were just erased. They were sentenced, incarcerated, some of them for life. They died in prison. You know, it's one thing to hear about it, like in mass media. It's another thing to be in a neighborhood and to experience and to watch your cousin get swept up in the system. My cousin Alan, when he was 18, was sentenced to life in prison and he served 21 years and he's now out and doing very well. 3 weeks after I graduated from college, I was in a courthouse where he was being sentenced to life, and I committed to being in touch with him. We wrote letters and he would send me photographs. And when I visited him in the prison, I'd always see art in the visiting room. So I got very fascinated with art making that was happening inside prisons. And so started off informally, and then it just grew into me being able to access over 70 currently and formerly incarcerated artists and to interview them and do deep dives into what's at stake. What does it mean to make art? How do you make art? How do you get material when literally the state is punishing you? How have you been able to take that experience and turn it into a space of incredibly immersive creativity?
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.